Hey, you guys, Erin here. I am back with another moon update for you. And what I'm going to be talking about today is actually a really special new moon we've got coming up here on Friday, August 22nd. However, the new moon peaks at 11:06 p.m. Pacific time on Friday, August 22nd. So with that said, for many of you over on the East Coast or other parts of the world, this would actually be coming through on Saturday, August 23rd. Now, this is coming through 0 degrees Virgo. If I'm going to get technical, 0 degrees and 23 arc minutes Virgo. So when we have a new moon that takes place at the 0 degree mark, what that means is we're going to end up having two new moons in the same sign in the same year. Generally speaking, we get one new moon per zodiac sign per year. Okay, but when it happens at the 0 degree mark, that means we're going to have another new moon in the sign of Virgo about 4 weeks from now. But that next new moon in the sign of Virgo, that will be on September 21st, will actually be a solar eclipse. Now, this new moon is actually kind of like opening up the gates for eclipse energy. Now, I'm going to explain something that's kind of complicated. Just follow along as best as you can. But the way eclipses work is we'll have either a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, and then 2 weeks later, we'll have a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. It's like the way this one's going to work. We're going to have this new moon in the sign of Virgo, 0 degrees Virgo. Then 2 weeks from now, we're actually going to have a total lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. Then 2 weeks after that, we will have the new moon / solar eclipse in the sign of Virgo. Okay, so this new moon kind of, again, opens up the gates for this celestial forces of eclipse energy. And with that said, it's especially since it's the south node is going through the sign of Virgo, might want to be a little bit mindful about, say the energy that you are surrounding yourself with, the people you are around and that sort of thing, because we become a little more susceptible to each other's energies, that sort of thing. Especially when we're having a new moon or a full moon opening up into this eclipse energy. Okay. But also with this new moon in the sign of Virgo at 0 degrees, it's very pure Virgo energy. It's like the purest form. And I love using that word pure for the sign of Virgo because it's really the sign of purity and purification. Okay, so it's like all these things that I'm going to describe about the sign of Virgo. It's just the sign of Virgo for this new moon. And approximately 6 months from now in February of 2026, that would be the full moon in the sign of Virgo. That would be the peak of the growth cycle. So where I'm going with this is that this new moon is a really fantastic time to be manifesting growth that's related to this sign of Virgo. Okay. Once something gets past like 2.5 degrees, it starts to blend in with other zodiac signs. Okay. So what I'm going to do in this recording is I'm going to break down the sign of Virgo for you. Okay. Because again, it's such a lovely energy. I don't think I've ever met a Virgo that I didn't enjoy. It's like, there tend to be it doesn't mean every single person who's a Virgo is going to be a total sweetheart, but every single Virgo and Virgo risings that Virgo rising I've met has been like unintentionally a people pleaser, just a sweetheart. Okay. And so I'm going to break down the sign of Virgo for you. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the chart and show you some very prominent astrological forces we're receiving at the time of this new moon. A lot of stuff going on between 0 and 1 degrees of zodiac signs. So that's really, really powerful stuff. Not only that, but we've got something called a yod going to this moon. We've got a quincunx going to Saturn and Neptune. We've also got a quincunx going to Pluto. So lots of stuff to break down. And then I'm going to talk about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Virgo, because these parts of our body become sensitized or activated anytime anything up in the sky is transiting through the sign of Virgo. And for this transit, of course, we have the sun and the moon going through the sign of Virgo, but we've also got the south node going through the sign of Virgo all the way until the end of July of 2026. So ultimately, it's a good idea to be paying a little extra attention to these parts of our bodies, especially in the days surrounding this transit. Of course, it's going to be unique to some people. Say you got a lot of strong planets in the early degrees of the sign of Virgo. You might notice something going on with these parts of our body. Other people might not notice anything at all, but that still these parts of our body are being sensitized by this new moon in the sign of Virgo. So I will be mentioning some potential herbal remedies to help support these parts of our bodies. And I will also be talking about some gemstones that resonate well with the sign of Virgo. I don't want to be repetitive because I know some of you guys watch my videos regularly, but for those of you who are new here, this is something I have been doing for 9 years consistently. Every single time we have a new moon, I pull out my journal, I write down the growth that I want to experience that's related to the sign that the new moon is taking place in. And if you're somewhat familiar with your natal chart, or if you've had a reading with me, you can go back and review the video recording to see which house in your natal chart this is coming through specifically for you. I always incorporate that into my journal entry. Say, for example, this new moon, the sign of Virgo, comes through my 10th house, my house of career. And so I include that as like the theme of this new moon and how I want to grow in these Virgoan ways, but applied to my career. Okay. And then I like to take some gemstones that resonate well with the sign the moon is transiting through and put them on top of my journal. I generally do this, hours leading up to the new moon. Sometimes I'll do it the day before, and then I'll just leave my journal out for a couple days with those gemstones on it. Okay. And that's what I like to teach you guys to do because I have seen really great results coming from this. I mean, of course, the universe always likes to throw surprises at us, but this is something that I have seen very powerful results come through with. Okay. So let's get into this. All right. So the sign of Virgo, this is what we call the mutable earth sign. When we say mutable, we're talking about adaptability, okay? Flexibility. The sign of Virgo tends to be flexible in life in general, being able to hang out with all different types of people. It's the mutable signs come when we're at the very end of a season. The sign of Virgo, it's the last zodiac sign of summer, which always breaks my heart. I'm always like holding on to the sign of Virgo for dear life because I don't want summer to end. But it mutates the energy for fall. Okay. When it's the end of Virgo season, we go into Libra season and that's fall. So these mutable signs, it's like you'll notice a lot of people have a lot of mutable stuff in their chart. They will kind of constantly be going throughout changes in their life. Sometimes these people will get bored with consistency. Okay. Or sometimes they'll just get sidetracked. And sometimes it's, not their choice at all. They're just throwing a lot of changes in life. Okay. Now also in the element of earth, this has a lot to do with like our earthly responsibilities. In fact, the sign of Virgo is kind of, in essence, associated with work. Okay, it's really like the sign of being of service. And notice a lot of strong Virgo placements. If somebody's got a lot of Virgo energy in their natal chart, they tend to make incredible like secretaries or assistants or some kind of a service position where they're a waitress or a flight attendant or a mechanic, something where they are providing a service. And I'm thinking of, I hope you're watching this, you know who you are. I'm not going to say your name, but my favorite Virgo person out there, name starts with the C, ends with an E. She's incredible with being of service. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Not only that, but she pays very, very close attention to detail. And she's constantly, it's like I've seen her post stuff where she's going through massive, massive amounts of paperwork and paying attention to all the little details of things. It's very Virgoan energy. And a lot of that, like paying attention to detail, comes from the fact that it's ruled by Mercury. Okay, Mercury is what influences or rules over basically our data processing, like information going in through our nervous system, into our spinal cord, storing the information there, and then bringing the information back out for us to communicate. That's what Mercury rules over. Okay, with that said, this sign of Virgo tends to be great at data processing and paying attention to the details and keeping the information organized. The motto for the sign of Virgo is I analyze. Okay. It's this sign. There can be this tendency when somebody's got really strong Virgo energy in their natal chart, there can be this tendency for these people to forget to take a step back and look at the whole grand big picture of things because they are so zoned in on the details. That's a very mercurial influence. Now, the sign of Virgo is represented by the Virgin. The Virgin that likes things to be pure and clean and organized, okay? It certainly doesn't mean everybody who's a Virgo out there is, going to want to stay a virgin, but a lot of times you'll notice like the true Virgoan qualities, they don't want to be out there doing promiscuous things. They want things to be pure in their bodies and in their environment, okay? And also, did I already mention this? The motto for the sign of Virgo is I analyze. when the sun goes into the sign of Virgo, it for a lot of us in the world, it's like harvest season. It's time to be harvesting, the fruits of the material world. And as somebody who I've grown a lot of my own food, when I go out, even though I don't even have any asteroids in the sign of Virgo. Gosh, I wish I had something in the sign of Virgo because I could really use it. But it's going out to pick, the plum or whatever it is, the squash, being super analytical about it. Like, oh my gosh, I want it to be perfect. And this is really like the sign of perfectionism. I want that piece of fruit or vegetable. I don't want to pick it too soon and have it not be ripe enough. I don't want to leave it too long and have it get overripe or the birds get to it. Like, just analytical. Okay. And again, this sign it's the sign of harvesting the fruits of the material world. It's the sign of the service to the world. Okay, so how do you want to grow in these ways that are related to this sign of Virgo? And again, it's so incredibly unique to each and every one of us. Let's say, for example, the sign of Virgo comes through your fourth house, your house of home and property and real estate. All of a sudden, you set the intentions. I want to make my home more organized. I want to purify my home, my property. Or maybe it's coming through your seventh house, your house of relationships. And you think to yourself, boy, I want to be of service to my partner or my business partner or something along those lines. Maybe it's coming through your sixth house, your house of physical health. And you set the intentions for, paying better attention to your physical health, setting the intentions for stronger physical health. I'll throw this out there right now. The sign of Virgo rules several different parts of the body, but one of it is the intestines and the liver, which are very, very important parts of our body for maintaining optimal health. Okay. And you'll notice a lot of Virgo people are very, I don't want to use the word finicky, but that's just what I'm going to use because I can't think of a better word right now. Like finicky about what they eat, like cutting through the, oh, I don't want that part. That part doesn't look perfect. I just want this part. But by nature, they will have like sensitive intestines and a sensitive liver, especially intestines. And even if they're not necessarily health conscious, they think to themselves, oh, that's going to make me feel bloated or something like that. I don't want to eat that. Because again, it's like they're paying attention to detail. It's really, in essence, the sign of being of service and of physical health. Okay, so how do you want to grow in these ways? Okay, so let's pull up the chart here and start going through some of these aspects. In case you're new here, I work with geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, what we're looking at here is a snapshot of what we call the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. With geocentric, we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. These right here are the symbols for the planets and celestial bodies. Like there's the sun, there's the moon, here's Mercury, here's Venus, here's Jupiter. And when we go in the wheel just a little ways, these are the symbols for the zodiac signs that all of these planets and celestial bodies will be beaming through onto Earth at the time of this new moon. So let's start here. Here's the sun, here's the moon. You can see there at 0 degrees, 23 minutes, Virgo. This is the glyph for Virgo. It kind of looks like a little M. Don't get it confused with the symbol for the glyph for the sign of Scorpio. They kind of look similar to, if you're new to this stuff, but look very closely at your natal chart to see where this symbol, this glyph is coming through, which house, which one of these things that looks like a slice of pie. If you're using Placidus, you're going to need to see where 0 degrees Virgo is, the very beginning of that Virgoan influence, to see which theme of your life this is coming through. And again, at 0 degrees, it's very powerful. It's very pure. Okay. Now, anytime we have a new moon, it means the sun and the moon are coming together. Moon's mother, sun's father, they're coming together and they're creating this energetic force, this energetic baby that grows over the next 6 months until February of next year. That would be the full moon in the sign of Virgo. That would be the peak of the growth cycle. Okay, now let's start with Mercury, since Mercury is like the ruler or the lord of this new moon. Okay, so Mercury will be at 12 degrees Leo. I think Mercury's in Leo for like another week and a half, 2 weeks after this new moon. So Mercury, we talked about what Mercury rules over: mental function, data processing, information going in and out of the consciousness. And the sign of Leo is the grand leader of the zodiac. Okay, the sign, if you especially, I mean, really for anybody, but especially if you got something prominent near 12 degrees Leo, it might be time for you to express that thing that you've been wanting to, whether if it's verbal or written communication or something with social media. Maybe you need to express something in a bold way. Okay, and then let's start talking about this yod. Okay, so this is a little difficult to interpret here. So just follow along as best as you can, because this is kind of an important combination of aspects. So here we have these brown lines that are going from here to here. They're going up to Saturn and Neptune. Okay, which are still in the sign of Aries. I'm not going to get into all the little fine little details because I'll overwhelm people, but they are in retrograde. They're going to go back into the sign of Pisces later on this year in September and October, and then they're going to move forward again. And next year they'll be in the sign of Aries again. But as of right now, they're both at these very early degrees of the sign of Aries. Okay, Saturn's at 0 degrees, Neptune is at 1 degrees. And they're in retrograde, so they're extra strong. Okay, now Saturn is the influencer of things like discipline and responsibilities, practicality. Okay, Saturn is what makes us do the hard work. Neptune here is what creates things like visions and dreams. So these guys coming together, it's like such an incredible creative energy, because it's, let's say you've had this vision of what you want to create or what you want to build. Let's say you're trying to build a business, or you're trying to build a website, or you're trying to build a home, whatever it is, you're trying to create something and you've had these visions of it going on. Okay, then they're coming together and Saturn's saying, let's make this the practical, tangible thing. And coming through the sign of Aries, Aries is the pioneer. Aries says, let's go. However, these quincunxes going from here to here, they're like a blind spot, okay? That's approximately 150-degree angle. It's similar to when you're driving your car. If, say, another car is coming up in the other lane, there's a certain point in the side view mirror where you can't see that of the car. It's a blind spot. It's a disconnect, okay? So this new moon is making a disconnect with these guys. And again, they're in retrograde. So with that said, in the days, just the days surrounding this transit, say August 20th to maybe August 24th or 25th, then you might want to put that thing on hold, whatever it is you're trying to create. You can keep the visions going, whatever it is you need to do, but kind of allowing for that disconnect and reevaluate how you want to go about it, since these guys are in retrograde. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you might be reevaluating it for a couple months while they're in retrograde, but ultimately just in the days surrounding this transit, I would maybe, let's say you're building a house. Maybe you might consider putting the hammer and nails down for just the days surrounding this transit and reevaluating it, taking a step back and going, am I doing all this stuff, paying attention to the details of this thing, that sort of thing. Okay, now also what we've got up here is Pluto going through Aquarius. And we've talked a lot about this. I don't want to go into all the details, but Pluto is also working very, very forcefully because he is also in retrograde and at 1 degree. Okay, overall, Pluto going through Aquarius for the next 19 years, we're going to see a death and rebirth process in I don't want to scare anybody, but overall, humanity and our technological advancements. Okay, that's just the briefest summary I can give for Pluto and Aquarius. But Pluto, basically what he does is he pulls us down into the underworld and he shows us the dark, scary stuff. And then we rise above that and we're empowered through that experience. The best example I can give is, say, your house burns down. That sucks. That's you're being shown like the dark side of life. If something horrible happens, a breakup, a divorce, something like that, Pluto will influence that sort of thing, like rough, bring you down. But then say it was a divorce and you meet a new person and you're totally empowered through that death and rebirth process. You found a great person that, makes you feel more powerful to, as a union, that sort of thing. Or your house burnt down and you rebuild a new, more powerful house. That's kind of a Pluto influence. Okay, now there's also this disconnect going through here. So let's say you are going through some sort of a hypothetical death and rebirth process. Okay, kind of putting that on hold in the days surrounding this transit, because it's like the sun and the moon's going to move along. She'll be away out of that quincunx in a matter of 12 hours or so. But the sun will still be making that quincunx for a couple of days after this transit. But what happens here is, since both of these guys, Pluto and Neptune and Saturn, are making these blind spot connections with this new moon, and again, especially because they're all in retrograde, Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune are all in retrograde, we put those things on hold in the days surrounding this transit. This green line, or green lines, I should say, going from here to here, going from Pluto to Saturn and Neptune, those are called sextile. Those create an opportunity. Now, together, these quincunxes and that sextile, that's a yod, or often described as the finger of God. And it can be like kind of a complicated or challenging combination of aspects. But that green line, if we're putting the focus here on the new beginnings, I'm moving my mouse over the sun and the moon because that's the new beginnings. If we're focusing on that, but putting the actual practice of the new beginning on hold for the next, few days after this transit, then the opportunities kick in, okay? The death and rebirth and the dreams and the practicality of bringing that into fruition, they can come together more gracefully. It's the finger of God pointing to the new beginnings. Wow, I really hope you guys can follow along with that, because that's a difficult one to break down. But ultimately, it's very, very powerful. Okay, let's talk about Uranus here. Also at 1 degree Gemini. Okay, that's what I'm saying. If you've got anything, and I've been saying this for the past couple of videos, but it's kind of extra strong for this transit. If you have anything, especially if it's your sun, your moon, or your rising sign between 0 and 2 degrees of really any zodiac sign, this is an extra powerful new moon for you, especially if it's the sign of Aquarius, the sign of Gemini, or the sign of Virgo, then it's extra powerful for you. Because these guys are power players and in these very early degrees of the zodiac signs. But Uranus influences technological advancements and going through the sign of Gemini. Like, I'm doing this because Uranus is like out with the old, in with the new, out with the old, in with the new, constantly trying to create new forces. And the sign of Gemini is very much the sign of communication. Okay, this can have a lot to do with, connecting through social media. This can have any text messages, that I say with a whole whirlwind of confidence that over these next 7 years, we are going to see the most advanced, crazy, wild technologies that we can't even dream up right now through. In fact, there's actually an AI, I can't remember exactly. I know it's called Gemini. You can look it up for yourself. Gemini AI. It's about language. It's AI for language. And they call it that because Gemini is a sign of communication. And that stuff like that is going to rapidly change, especially because Uranus here is going to be trining Pluto kind of for like a year. Okay. Sometimes it'll be stronger than others. That trine will kind of disconnect and then come back together. But Pluto creating a death and rebirth process in the sign that rules over humanity and technology, and then Uranus creating abrupt changes in the sign that rules over things like social media. That is really, really strong stuff. Okay, so gosh, I could just go on and on. I just don't want to overwhelm people. Okay, let's talk about Mars over here in Libra. So Mars is what influences force. Okay, if you look at the symbol for Mars, it's because he wants to penetrate. Mars wants to pierce through things. He's the planet of war. He's aggressive. Okay, but Mars also makes us take action. Okay, the sign of Libra is a sign of justice. It's a sign of fairness. It's represented by the scales. It's about making things fair. Okay, so I'm kind of wondering, while these next few weeks, while Mars is going through that sign of justice, I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen with, I mean, really a lot of things going on in politics. As I've told you so many times before, it's like, I don't like to involve myself in politics, but at the same time, politics involves itself with me. We're human, we're people. It's like, and we could do the best we can to, detach from those things and not participate in those things, but it's still going to have an effect on all of us. Okay. But I'm thinking about things like the Epstein files. People are demanding to know what's going on. And I love seeing that because, in my opinion, my very strong opinion, there's a massive amount of corruption and secrets going on behind the scenes. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of glad that this happened with the Epstein files. Oh, they're on my desk, Pam Bondi, they're on my desk. We're going to go through this. You're going to hear all kinds of stuff. Oh, never mind. Epstein was a hoax. That sort of thing. More and more people are starting to go, wait a minute here. What the heck is really going on? And I do feel like Mars going through Libra might take some action with that. But also, if you've got anything near 10 degrees Libra, you might want to be a little bit mindful in the days surrounding this transit. It might be a good time to take action with something. It depends on what it is. Let's say it's Mercury at 10 degrees Libra in your natal chart. You might be dealing with mental frustrations, but it also could be like, I have to go talk to this person. I mean, it just really depends on what it is. But if you've got anything near 10 degrees Libra in your natal chart, Mars is trying to activate that thing. Okay, now let's talk about these nodes and then we'll talk about Chiron. Okay, so the North Node going through the sign of Pisces all the way until the end of July of 2026, and the South Node going through the sign of Virgo till the end of July of 2026. They're always exactly opposite each other. North Node is pumping Pisces energy in all the way through the July of next year. Okay, if you got anything near 18 degrees Pisces in your chart, just realize you're receiving an extra dose of the energy of whatever that is. But ultimately, we are all receiving this extra dose of this very mystical Piscean fluid kind of energy. Okay. Then Virgo, South Node, that's the drain point. It's draining this Virgo energy out. These nodes are what are going to make those eclipses happen. These upcoming eclipses on September 7th and September 21st. Okay, so there's going to be extra energy coming through. It's going to be technically lunar energy coming through the sign of Pisces. But then there's also drainage going on in the sign of Virgo. If you have anything near 18 degrees Virgo, be mindful because it's like that South Node is acting as a drain. And just say, for example, you've got your Mars near 18 degrees Virgo. All of a sudden you're not ready to take the action that you want to take, or maybe your muscles are not feeling quite as strong, or your adrenals are kind of drained or something along those lines. Okay, so there's that. But also, I'll just say this, because I don't want to forget to mention it earlier. With that South Node going to the sign of Virgo all the way until the end of July, when I bring up, the parts of the body, recognize that these parts of their body, it's kind of just by nature to drain things out of those parts of our body, to intestines, liver, and we'll get further into details shortly here. Okay, now let's talk about Chiron going through Aries. Okay, so Chiron is in the sign of Aries basically until the middle of 2027. Next year in 2026, Chiron will peep into the sign of Taurus, but then retrograde back in the sign of Aries until 2027. So this is between now, basically, to sum this up, between now and summer of 2027, Chiron, the wounded healer, is saying, let's heal these wounds ourselves. Aries is the sign of self. Take action with the healing journey. It's going to be a totally different story when Chiron moves into the sign of Taurus. Okay. It's like the wounded healer is beaming through the warrior of self. Okay. Not only that, but Aries rules top of the head. This could involve something like, a lot of people are working on healing their pineal glands and that sort of thing. So take that into consideration. If you're somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 years old, like 49 to 51 years old, then you are having a Chiron return and it's kind of extra powerful for you. So take all that into consideration. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot about my favorite things to talk about here. Let's talk about Jupiter and Venus, the benefics. Okay, so here's Venus. She's got after this new moon, she's got 3 more days in the sign of Cancer. Venus, the influencer of love and beauty and harmony and things that are of a romantic nature. If you got anything near 27 degrees Cancer, really between 26 to 29 degrees Cancer, then you're receiving that Venusian Venus energy onto that thing in your chart. And then next up, Venus will move into the sign of Leo. Venus works beautifully I happen to really enjoy Venus and Leo as well, but Venus works beautifully in the sign of Cancer because Cancer is such a natural empath. Okay. Cancer is like, it's the sign of feelings. It's the sign of nurturing. Okay. A lot of people who are born with Venus and Cancer just are very by nature caring people, very receptive people. So we're all receiving that Venus and Cancer energy. And Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer all the way until the end of June, maybe the middle of June of 2026. This is Jupiter's favorite sign to be in. Jupiter is a great benefic. Jupiter is what influences abundance. Basically, Jupiter going to the sign of Cancer can be very, very charitable. As I've said many, many times before, Jupiter going to the sign of Cancer until next summer, I feel like that's our saving grace because there's all these other super wacky, weird things going on. But Jupiter going through Cancer is this energy of abundance, like extra abundance and kindness and charity and that sort of thing. And especially if you've got something near 16 degrees Cancer, then realize you've got the great benefic Jupiter, this bringer of abundance and luck and wisdom into that. Say it's your Mercury, all of a sudden you're expanding your consciousness, or maybe it's your rising sign. You got Cancer rising, especially if it's near 16 degrees Cancer rising, you're receiving the abundance into your life. I mean, we all are. It's a good idea. Look to see in your natal chart where the sign of Cancer is coming through. Say it's your 8th house, your house of transformation. There's a lot going on and this abundance of transformation going on in your life. Or maybe it's your 10th house and you're having some sort of a career peak or abundance in your status in the world, that sort of thing. Okay, so I think I covered everything I wanted to there. Let's talk about body parts. Okay, so the sign of Virgo, as mentioned earlier, does rule the liver and rules the intestines. It also rules the sympathetic nervous system. This is kind of like the nervous earth sign. Generally speaking, the earth signs are more like calm natured, but Virgo's more like nervous earth sign because it rules that fight or flight part of us. Okay. So with that said, especially if you got like prominent Virgo energy in your natal chart, I mean, hops is a great way to support the nervous system, especially if it's Virgo kind of energy going on. Hops can have a tendency to make some people sleepy. But overall, I mean, if you're somebody who deals with a lot of like anxiousness and nervousness and you got a lot of Virgo energy in your natal chart, you might, and I'm not a doctor, this is not medical advice, but you might want to give a hops tincture a whirl. And then, I mean, also for the nervous system, there's, lemon balm can be great. Milky oats, oat tops can be great. CBD can be great. I actually am thinking of a Virgo right now. She's got, I can't remember ton of Virgo placements in her chart. And when she was here in California, we went to a dispensary and she got some CBD tinctures to help with the nervousness and the anxiousness. CBD is not necessarily available in every place around, but CBD can be really, really great. In fact, let me just tell a little story. As many of you know, a couple months ago now, my little dog passed away, and that was, I mean, man, I've been through some really hard times in my life. That was like the hardest. And I know that sounds crazy. It sounds insane, but he was just my boy. And like the last couple months of him being around, I was constantly on edge. I'm not a nervous person by nature at all. I mean, of course I've had times of nervousness, but I'm not an anxious person. But those last couple months of his life, I was like, I didn't, is any day now, and I just was constantly on edge. And so I got this CBD. When I say tincture, it's generally going to be more like an oil base tincture for the CBD. And just, I took half of the recommended dosage. It was like the suggested dose was 15 drops. And when I did 15 drops, it maybe kind of a little bit too, I don't know, I guess relaxed or something. I think maybe because like I said, I'm a Pisces. I'm opposite Virgo. Pisces rules the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxed part. So maybe a little too relaxed and unmotivated. But then when I went down to like 5 to 7 drops, it was really, really helpful for my nervous system. So there's that. Now, as far as the liver goes, this right here is milk thistle, which milk thistle, if you live in an area that's kind of in any sort of like wilderness or country kind of area, you might be able to find milk thistle, and it's the time of year where it's probably about ready to be harvested. Milk thistle it's called thistle because it's very thistly. It's very, very pokey, and it hurts to get poked by it. It tends to get very tall, not always, sometimes it can be shorter. And then at the top, it's got these like little purple sort of pokey looking flowers. You can just do an internet search for milk thistle and what it looks like. There's lots of different strains. But what you do is once that plant kind of dries up and turns like a brownish color, loses its green, the little purple flowers end up, poof, they turn into these little things that look like fairies. In fact, a lot of people will call them fairies because they just kind of float around, almost like dandelions, a little bit different though. And in those little fairy things, that's where you find the seeds. And sometimes they're black, sometimes they're really little. When they're really little, they're very difficult to harvest. I mean, they're kind of hard to harvest no matter what because it's so prickly. You can, if you want to try and harvest milk thistle yourself, there's maybe I should just leave a link for it. There's a really, really great, like video. This lady shows how to do it. That's why I watched it years ago and was like, oh my God, this is awesome. She was super helpful. But you can also just go get milk thistle seeds, from an herb shop or order them online. I always recommend going with organic. But milk thistle is not only detoxifying for the liver, but it can like rejuvenate the tissues of the liver. Okay. Milk thistle can be super, super helpful. Again, I'm not a doctor. It's not medical advice. You got to be careful with these things. Maybe, 1 in 5 million, somebody's allergic to milk thistle. So you got to be a little bit careful. But overall, milk thistle is always my go-to to support the liver. I always indulge because if I'm going to get technical here, the moon transits through every single zodiac sign, goes around the entire zodiac every single month. So with that said, every single month, the moon transits through the sign of Virgo, whether if it's full moon or new, it can be just waxing moon, waning moon through the sign of Virgo. I always indulge in a little bit of milk thistle tea. Personally, I like to add it in with other things. I like to mix it with Damiana, no, not Damiana. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank right now. What is the flower? I can't remember right now, but I like to mix it in with other herbs. Say even something like burdock root. I can't remember the name of this flower right now. For some reason, it's not coming to my mind. But regardless, I like to add milk thistle into other teas. Oh, and on that note, what I'll do is I will take these seeds, which you don't have to do this, but it's just going to be more potent if you do this. They're kind of holding their potency together as a full seed. Right before I make the tea, I put them into the coffee grinder and I grind them up, and then I make the tea with that. So it's kind of like the difference between having, like, say you want to order them online. If you see the option to order the full seeds or the already ground up ones, I recommend getting the full seeds and grinding them up yourself. It's kind of like, wouldn't you prefer like freshly ground pepper, on your salad or whatever? It's kind of like that. There's just more potency if you grind it up yourself right before making the tea. You don't have to do that if you don't feel like it though. Okay, then intestines, obviously a very important part of the body. And I pull this out at so many videos. I've been talking about this stuff for probably like 5 or 6 years. And I love it. It's called RUG, Remove Unwanted Guests. Right there, it says intestinal support. Okay. A lot of times when we're dealing with gut issues, intestinal issues, a lot of times it's parasites. Okay. And so this will remove the bad parasites, the stuff that ends up messing with our brain and all sorts of things. Can be great for digestion. Okay, you might want to be a little bit, I'll leave a link where you can get this stuff. If you've never taken it before, you might want to be a little bit careful, like start with one and then try two together, that sort of thing. Everybody's a little bit unique from each other, but that is my favorite go-to for intestinal support, because if your intestines, if you got something going on in your intestines, nothing else in your body is going to be working optimally, especially the brain. Okay, so there's that. Gemstones. The dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Virgo is sapphire, which I can't figure out why. I can't find any real, like I find this kind of, new age stuff that kind of explains why sapphire is Virgo's dedicated zodiacal birthstone. But in traditional astrology, it's not adding up to me, so I don't get it. Plus, there's so many different kinds of sapphire. There's blue sapphire, there's yellow sapphire, there's pink sapphire, there's green sapphire, which are all going to be very, very different energies from each other. Blue sapphire is more like, could be great for inflammation, because blue sapphire is going to like cool energies down, versus yellow sapphire is going to open energies up. Green sapphire might be great for mental function. They're all, pink sapphire could be really, really good for emotions. But with that said, okay, when we talk about like traditional Jyotish, Upaye, medical astrology, we would be looking at Mercury's stone, because Mercury is Virgo's ruler, which Mercury's stone is actually emerald, green emerald. Okay, green emerald can be especially great for a Virgo rising. Green emerald can be really good for clarity and mental function. Okay, so obviously, like emeralds are not exactly affordable. I mean, maybe for some people they are, but they're quite expensive. And so kind of like a more affordable, let's just say it can work, maybe not quite as powerfully as the green emerald. But this right here is malachite, another green stone. There's a lot of copper in malachite. I've pulled this out for many videos. One of the reasons I love malachite is because A, it's got a lot of copper in it. It's one of the top recommended stones from Edgar Cayce. It's very, very protective. But the green stones are good for that mental function. Okay, so let's say you're somebody with an overstimulated nervous system and you're always anxious. Then the malachite, metaphysically speaking here, will calm that nervous system. If you're somebody, say your Mercury's in Pisces and you're kind of always a little bit woo, like not exactly the stimulated nervous system, then what the malachite can do, and green emerald can do as well, really green stones in general, that's kind of a bold statement, but for the most part, green stones will then kind of pick up the nervous system. Okay, just overall, the energy of the green stones is great for mental function and nervous system. Not only that, but malachite is super protective and it resonates beautifully with a lot of different zodiac signs. Okay, so with that said, like green stones in general, this right here is tree agate. Tree agate and moss agate are quite similar, at least in looks, but they can both work for this really just, again, green stones in general. This is great for emotional stuff, but also like the mental function overall. And any kind of green agate can be great. This right here is a green, it's Kambaba, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, Kambaba jasper, green jasper, which is another one totally different than the agates, but a very, very powerful stone. And again, ultimately, we're looking for the green stones here. But there's plenty of other stones that resonate well with the sign of Virgo. I always leave a full extensive list in the description below. But I also want to take this one out. This right here is snowflake obsidian, which is also really good for the mental function and clarity and purification in, the nervous system sort of thing. And I don't know if I'm just a total weirdo. I don't know. I mean, I know I'm a little bit of a hippie, but for some reason, I love gemstones, like tripping out on them, bringing them out into the sun and looking at them. And snowflake obsidian is one of my favorites to just look into. It's absolutely gorgeous. So those are the stones that I am going to be working with for this new moon. in Virgo. And if you don't have any of these gemstones, please do not feel like you're missing out on something. In fact, if you got any gemstones, if you just want to go get yourself some gemstones to work with, personally, what I would do is I would get 3 stones if you can. You could get tiny little piece of crystal quartz for like $2, and then a tiny little piece of, say, something like black tourmaline, just a tiny little piece for $2 or $3. And then maybe one more stone that just kind of resonates with you. Where I'm going with this is like, if you get one, these are kind of bigger, but let's do this one. So here's crystal quartz. This right here is black tourmaline. Okay, this is an amplifier. This is a protector. And then let's go with, I guess this would be a good example. This right here is kyanite. So working with the trinity of, say, you want something protective, but you also want something to amplify, and then just one other stone that calls to you. And again, they could be super tiny to start with. And if you want to manifest more gemstones after that, write that down in your journal, especially when it's a new moon. Okay, I think I'm going to leave that there. If you would like to schedule your own natal chart analysis, your own astrology reading, whatever kind of reading you want to go into, progressions, transits, relationships, whatever, medical astrology, you can schedule through my website, which is erinwageastrology.com. I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.